Hey guys, it is the Comics Kid 2099. I am right now laying down on my floor. I have a bottle of water over here that you cannot see. So in case this collection video installment runs much longer than I think it might, I have got water so that my throat doesn't get dry. And I guess we'll get started. But before I do, I want to say my collection videos are going to be even more sparse than what they have been. I have been on and off again doing these collection videos since I guess I started the channel, and the problem is I move books around. So like what used to be about half of my DC shelf soon became just Batman and Superman, and then when I got another bookcase, I moved all of those DC books over to the other bookcase, and then that level of the bookcase that you are now looking at became the third X-Men shelf. And so now most of this bookcase is X-Men books, 3/5 of it anyway. So I've shown you guys almost every shelf that I have, but a lot of books have been moved around in different shelves, so I don't know what you guys have seen and what you guys haven't seen. So if I do more collection videos, I think I'll definitely do at least 3 more, because there's a shelf over here to the left that you guys haven't seen yet. If I do more, then you may start seeing more books that you've already seen before or something like that. I'll just figure it out as I go. This is one of my indie shelves. The first 2 books here, I'm not going to pull these out. Or at least not the first couple here. These are Dilbert books. Actually, the first 3 are Dilbert books. I enjoy Dilbert okay. Mostly now I only read Sunday comic strips. I don't read the daily stuff throughout the week. But I like Dilbert, and I've got a couple of his books here. Let's see, 5, 7, and 8. And then I have another one somewhere that I have not yet read. With Dilbert, and really with any comic strip, I think it's better to read it in small doses, because when you try and read a year of Dilbert all in the span of a week or so, it's gonna get I don't want to say boring, but it's gonna be a chore to read at times. I still think most of it is pretty funny, but I think it reads much better when you are reading it day to day. Then over here we have, this is called Kane. And these people, I don't know that guy's name, Barrerio, I don't know his first name, but Riso is the artist, and Eduardo Riso draws the Vertigo series 100 Bullets, and this is basically a post-apocalyptic revenge story. And the artwork, it looks a lot like what you're seeing here on the cover. The artwork is very wonderful, and I really, I bought it in one of my phases where I wanted to try something new, something I hadn't really heard of before, and I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. It has been a few years since I've read it, but when I read it, I did enjoy it. And it is from a now defunct comic book company in Sarajevo. I believe that company is no longer going on, but this other book is also from the same company, and it is a story of a little boy who is a vampire. He's from ancient Egypt. If you are tired of vampire stories and you want some good supernatural fiction, this is one I would recommend. This is nothing like any other vampire story that you've seen. And I should go ahead and say both of these, they're not children's stories. These are for the more adult readers out there. I believe both of them have some pretty objectionable content if you are a parent. Or even if you just don't like the more hard R-rated stuff, these books definitely toe the line. But I really enjoyed Kane and Boy Vampire. Now, I believe there were more volumes of Boy Vampire, but I don't know if they were translated into English or not. And I am not fluent in any other language other than English, so if they were written in whatever language is spoken in Sarajevo, I very likely would not be able to read them. So if you do know other languages, then you might want to look into that. But I really enjoyed both of those. And now here, oh wow, these are packed in tight. Saber. This is by Don McGregor. Don McGregor, he did Killraven, which in, I believe, my previous collection video, Killraven was on my shelf, and I really, really loved Killraven. And Saber is very similar to some of the work he did on Killraven. I don't immediately know which came first, if it was Saber or Killraven. I want to say Killraven came first, but I'm not completely 100% sure on that. But Saber is interesting. It's very stylistically interesting. The plot is pretty forgettable, if I'm being honest. I read it a few years ago, and I don't remember much of what happened. I just remember what the world looked like. The world pretty much looked like what you would see in Killraven. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic story. Sorry if this video is giving you vertigo. I'm laying down on the floor, literally, so it's kind of hard for me to show you guys these books. But yeah, that's not Killraven, that's Saber. This is Hard Boiled by Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow. I read this years ago, and like Saber, I don't remember much about the plot. The artwork is very good. It's by Jeff Darrow, and it's also one of those books, if you're younger than 18, I caution you to be careful, because it's got some very, not only some nakedness in there, but I think there's also quite a bit of like humans exploding and being shot in the head and stuff. So definitely something that you probably want to be careful if you get into that, because it's, you know, something that's got some of the stuff that you probably don't need to see. Chronos Carnival. This is something I bought used in a comic book shop. It's by 2000 AD. And it is like a science fiction zoo, basically. This woman here and her partner in the wheelchair, there we go, you can see them both there. They work at this zoo with lots of alien animals and interdimensional aliens. It's pretty fun. Nothing mind-blowing. If you read it, I'm finding a lot of this stuff is stuff that I read a few years ago, like probably 3 years ago. And I'm not really good at remembering the plot on most of this, but that lady looks like the lady from Three's Company, Janet. But yeah, if you like British comics, that is from 2000 AD, which is a British comic book, then I would suggest checking that out, just if you're curious. Roswell Walks Among Us. This is a lot of fun. I want to say that this premiered in the Simpsons comic book, like as a backup story, but I could be wrong. I know Bill Morrison had some affiliation with the Simpsons comics, but this is basically kind of a comedic version of the Roswell space incident. And I believe this guy, this little alien's name is Roswell, or they give him the name Roswell, I think. It's very funny. But if you don't like comedic comic books, then probably you'd want to give this one a skip. I think the first half was funnier than the second half. It does act like there's more after this, but I don't think there are any more graphic novels that collect this stuff. So it's probably just single issue stuff that continues the adventure, if you will. Oh, wow. I may have to split this one into two parts, because it has taken me a lot longer to pull these out than I thought it would. Crypto Zoo Crew, Volume 2. This is, you know, husband and wife team. I guess you can't see the husband. That's probably his hand right there. There's the wife. And they are cryptozoologists or zoologists, whatever. And basically, they investigate weird animals, I guess. Like, there's dinosaurs and stuff. I don't know if this book had animals that could theoretically exist, or if it mostly dealt with animals that probably couldn't exist, like, you know, a cyclops or something like that. I know right here we have a pterodactyl, but I think there might have been some animals on there that were kind of more fictional, if you will. But this was a lot of fun. I seem to think that Alan Gross has worked on some of the other stuff on this shelf. Yes, I see his name on another book. I will cover him momentarily when we get to that other book. So this is another one. This one would be good for children, I think. With the occasional swear word, I think this one was pretty clean. So if you are looking for stuff to give your kids to read, this is one that I would say go for it. Hero Squared. That one just got pulled out all the way. Hero Squared. This is by Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatteis, and I don't know who Abraham is, but these two writers, Giffen and DeMatteis, they worked on the Justice League International comic book in the 1980s. And this is basically, it was treated as the same kind of premise, like superheroes as a sitcom instead of being more serious. And it doesn't quite live up to that premise. It's much more serious than you would think. At the end, it's kind of treated as more dramatic than what it really is. And I would have preferred this to have been more of a comedic story, kind of like Justice League International. But basically the premise is this guy here, he's a film connoisseur, and this guy is his alternate universe counterpart who has superpowers. And it's sort of an odd couple situation. One of them has a girlfriend, this guy here does, and hilarity ensues, except that it's not all that funny. If you like these guys, Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, give it a try. But I saw this, and let me put it this way. There is a sequel, I think, and there's also a spin-off that features the superhero guy on his home world with a superhero team. And to put it bluntly, I read this and I decided I did not have to get the spin-off or the sequel. That's how very little I enjoyed it. The art is great, but the premise and the execution of the premise is not exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to take this out, and maybe it won't be as hard to pull the rest of these out. Buckaroo Banzai, Return of the Screw. I don't know if that is a photograph of Peter Weller or if that is a drawing of him, but this is a sequel to the 1984 sci-fi cult classic Buckaroo Banzai, which if you saw my DVD collection a while back, you know that I'm a big fan of Buckaroo Banzai. This book is awful. This is abundantly awful. There is very, very little about this that is good. If you like the movie, do not read this. If you've never seen the movie, I don't see any reason why you would read this. In fact, you probably wouldn't even know this exists. I don't remember where I got this, if I ordered it online or if I got it in a bookstore, but it's really not good. I don't know how else to say it. It's like, 120 pages, but it's got like 15 characters in it, and the new characters that they try to introduce, they are not explained very well. It's just not that great of a comic book. So, sadly, I'm going to have to say this one doesn't work at all, and I'm going to pull it out too. Okay, I'm no longer laying down because that was not working for me. I was having trouble breathing. So I'm just going to, hopefully this angle works for you guys. You can see the water bottle, to which I earlier alluded. This book is called Tempest Fugitive. I've never heard of the author/illustrator Ken Stacy, spelled Stacy, I don't know. You can see it right there. This is very much a plot-driven science fiction thriller type story. It's about this guy. He is jumping all throughout time. He visits like 5 or 6 different time periods. Some of them are real time periods. Some of them are futuristic-y time periods that now look very dated. But the characterization is not very present, but the plot is fun enough. So if you like science fiction, time travel type stuff, this would be fun. But if you also like deep characterization and character studies, this is going to not quite deliver in that regard. So I just wanted to throw that one out there. This is another one that I got whenever I wanted to. I like to every once in a while try something that is unfamiliar to me, get something outside of the box. And a lot of this stuff is stuff like that, where I see it, it looks cool, and I get it, and then it may or may not be as cool as it looks. So that's one that was like that. So up next, we've got several different Planet of the Apes books. The first 3 came out around the time when the 2001 movie came out, the one with Mark Wahlberg. And these 3 are all sequels. So like this has like Chris Bachalo's art on the cover, but Chris Bachalo did not do the interiors. And all 3 of these are loosely connected. They're dealing with some of the same characters. They're not very good. I mean, the focus shifts quite a bit on which character becomes the main character, which that could be okay if handled right, but I don't feel like it is handled very well. Sometimes you're meant to think this is almost a complete reimagining in that it doesn't really reference the 2001 movie that much, and then you will see a character from the 2001 movie, and you may not even remember that character's name, but suddenly they show up and they're a major part of the story. So there were 3 of these. None of them are very thick. None of them are over 100 pages, I don't think. And then there's this other one by Boom Studios. I got it a couple years ago, and it is, I think what's going on here, this is a prequel to the original movie, the one in 1968 or 69 with Charlton Heston. This is set in between the present day in those movies and the first movie where the apes meet Charlton Heston. It's set in between those times, and there's a lot of ambiguity in those 5 movies about, like, you can hear my cat, by the way, over here. You won't see her, though. There's a lot of ambiguity about what is actually officially part of that world and what isn't because of changes made to the timeline. So I'm not entirely sure what is going on here. This book was much better than the Dark Horse books. I know there's a couple more stories from Boom. I have not seen them at any store that I've gone to since I bought this one, so I don't have any of them yet. I think I got this one discounted. It's pretty good. Some of the characters are really unlikable. In fact, most of them are. But that's sometimes... See, you can hear my cat over there. That's sometimes a thing that you just have to worry about. Characters who you're not going to like, but you just have to deal with it. Over here, Cyber Force, yes. Guys, this is bad. Don't buy Cyber Force. As a rule of thumb, I would say don't buy anything from Image Comics from the 1990s. This is from, like, the very beginning of Image. Cyber Force was basically Mark Silvestri's X-Men ripoff. It's got characters in it who are very clearly meant to be X-Men. Like this guy, Ripclaw, he's Wolverine. One of these guys is like, I guess that guy was supposed to be Colossus. One of these girls is supposed to be Psylocke. Basically, like this guy's got, you know, the weird eye thing, and he's got a metal leg. I wonder who he's supposed to be. He's Cable, in case you're wondering. Maybe like, oh, see the foil cover. Yeah, it's really not that good. Not a lot of substance here. It's very typical Image Comics from the 90s. It's just, I don't know what else to say. If you do like Image Comics from the 90s, first of all, I don't want you to think that I am dissing your taste in comic books, but maybe you'll like that. Actually, I was dissing your taste in comics, so I apologize for that, but I am not a fan of the Image books from the 90s. In my opinion, they're not very good. So I got that because I was curious. I was morbidly curious. I paid money for it. Don't be like me. Moving on. Jingle Bell. This is by a guy named Paul Dini. He worked on the Batman cartoon in the 90s. He's done some Batman comics himself, and if I am not mistaken, there is something else on this shelf that he did, but it may be on a different shelf. I don't know. We'll figure that out in a minute. This is basically Santa's rebellious teenage daughter. It's funny, it's cute. If you have children that you want to get into comic books, this is a good one. Give it to them. If you want something that's a little more superhero-y, probably not for you, because this is about Santa's teenage daughter. I liked it. It was fun. If they did a sequel, though, I don't know if I would get it, because it's cute, it's fun, but it's also not necessarily my cup of tea, if that makes any sense at all. So, now we've got 2 of the cats in here. This is a Magic the Gathering book, and I bought this on a whim because I wanted to read some hard fantasy comic books. I know sometimes you will see fantasy kind of edging into comic books. You have something like Thor and Wonder Woman. Those are fantasy based, but they're not full-on fantasy. They're also about 60% superhero-y. I wanted some straight up fantasy, and I got this, and it wasn't all that good because I am not familiar with Magic the Gathering. I know nothing about the role-playing game or the card game or anything like that, and I feel like this wants you to be familiar with the world of Magic, and I am not. Now, it gives you like this really long text piece at the very beginning trying to catch you up on what's happened, and then suddenly you're supposed to know 5 or 6 characters and who they are. I didn't know who they were, so that was a problem for me. It has some good creators on it. Mike Grell, he did, it's Warlord. He did Warlord for DC Comics, which was a fantasy comic book, and he did Green Arrow for a little while. I read some of his Green Arrow, and I thought it was really fun. And Pop Mahan, he is a European artist. I know I've read some of his stuff. His art is decent here, but overall, I say if you're not a Magic the Gathering fan, you're going to be pretty lost reading that, or at least I was. Maybe you're smarter than me and you probably will get it more than I do, but I didn't really get it when I was reading it. So, it was there. Maybe if you are a fan of Magic the Gathering, you would have more fun with that. Sorry, you're going to keep hearing my voice trail off a little bit because I don't know what these cats are up to. The Clone Conspiracy. This was a lot of fun. This is by Alan Gross, who I mentioned earlier, Mark Wheatley, he is a favorite of mine, and Mark Hempel, who is another favorite of mine. Those 3 guys, I will just about buy, mostly the 2 Marks, Mark Wheatley and Mark Hempel. I will buy just about anything that their name is on, and in fact, on this shelf, there's a few things that some of those guys have done that I will show you guys as we get there. But this was really fun. It was, first of all, there's like this lengthy text piece at the beginning, which is kind of a fictional article that is set within this world about a theory on cloning that involves William Shakespeare and what's that guy? Francis Bacon. A whole bunch of different historical figures. It's kind of fun to read that, and then the story itself is also really fun. So if you like science fiction stories that are very self-contained, I would suggest this. There's a character in here, Dr. Cyborg. He also has his own solo graphic novel that I have not read, but this is a lot of fun. I don't know how much it ties into the Dr. Cyborg book, because I think a large portion of this book was actually a dream, so I don't know if the Dr. Cyborg book is a dream also, or if it's a real story involving fictional characters. I don't know. But this was a whole lot of fun. I would highly recommend it. Now, here we have Cold War by John Byrne. This is basically, if James Bond had more realistic gadgets and technology and was less promiscuous, this is what that would be. This is not I don't know. I mean, if you like James Bond and you want less sexuality and weird technological gadgets, then this was probably right up your alley. In my opinion, if you are going to do a story like this is James Bond in everything but name only, in my opinion, you really need to do something to make me want to read that. Because if you're just doing a normal James Bond story, then I can go ahead and just watch a James Bond story. I don't have to read the Michael Swan dossier. And that's basically what this is. This is a James Bond story that isn't officially James Bond. I bought this because John Byrne wrote and drew it, and it's really not that great. Again, it's a decent enough story, but I feel like it should have had more going for it if I'm to read a knockoff James Bond title. That's just my opinion. You may or may not agree with me. Now, right here, we've got Classic G.I. Joe Volume 1. I know that IDW has done like 8 or 9 trades of this series, and I have heard from many people that this series is like the best thing to come out of the 80s and 90s. I read this and I didn't really think it was anything special. I was hoping that it would be good, but a lot of the characters here came off bland. I feel like you could switch their dialogue around and it wouldn't really matter. None of them really had a personality to speak of. It was just all of these characters, they've each got different names. They each look a little different, but they all act about the same. And I've never watched the cartoon, the G.I. Joe cartoon, so that probably was a strike against this book from the beginning, because I don't know a lot about the G.I. Joe mythology. And this did a decent job getting you into it, telling you, okay, Cobra Command is the bad guys, and these guys are the good guys. But I feel like, just on a comic book level, this wasn't that good. It didn't really do a whole lot to make me want to read Volume 2. Now, I have heard a fan of this series say that starting in what is collected in Volume 2, it gets better, but unfortunately, they lost me. If you can't hook me in the first 8 or 9 issues, then you don't need to hook me at all. I shouldn't have to give you an entire year to get your game together and suddenly start producing good comic books. They should have been doing that from the beginning, and in my opinion, they weren't. So I'm not going to be getting Volume 2. And that's fine with me, because I have so much else to read. I don't need to be adding more to it with stuff that I'm already hesitant to read in the first place. Okay, so I need to go a little bit faster, because I've already been doing this for like 20 minutes or more, and I'm like 1/5 of the way through this shelf. Danger Unlimited. This is a really thick book, but I would say only half of it is actually about this team, Danger Unlimited. The concept is brilliant. Basically, you've got this team of characters. They basically are the Fantastic Four. You look at these guys, you can kind of see which ones are supposed to be the Fantastic Four. And they get their powers in the 1950s, just like the Fantastic Four did. And then they fight crime for, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. And then something happens to the team. We don't know what. And then, like 50 years in the future, one of them gets woken up. And it's been like 50 years. He doesn't remember anything. And so the people who wake him up, they've given him these goggles. And the goggles kind of are historical documentaries that are telling him a little bit about this team he was part of, Danger Unlimited. And so from that point on, you are getting stuff that's happening in the past, and then you're also getting the formation of a new team in the future with this other guy. And it's really interesting, and I feel like this series could have lasted 30 or 40 issues easily, just based on concepts that you see in this book. However, it got canceled after like 3 issues. I don't remember if it was canceled itself or if John Byrne just said, no, I'm not going to keep doing this, but that's what happened. Now, remember what I was saying about the Cold War book, about how you really should do something different if you're going to rip off a concept? This does that, okay? It's basically the Fantastic Four done by John Byrne once again. And in fact, in the book, he even says something that makes me kind of want to punch him in the face. He says, at the time, nobody else was doing the Fantastic Four right, so he decided he was going to have a shot at it. Which is kind of an arrogant thing to say, yeah, but at least he is doing that thing where this is the Fantastic Four, but it is not exactly the Fantastic Four. It's just different enough that you're interested in it. And the rest of this book is other things by John Byrne that are also set in the same world. At the beginning of, I guess, Dark Horse's formation, there was kind of sort of this attempt to do a shared universe. There was Hellboy, Danger Unlimited, and then a series called Babe, and that might have been it. Yeah, Babe and this and Hellboy. And they were all sort of supposed to be set in the same world, but then after John Byrne's projects basically just ended, Hellboy was really the only thing left. And this, like I said, has 3 issues of Danger Unlimited, and then I think 2 of the Babe miniseries. And it's interesting, but if you are the kind of person you're saying, well, it's canceled, why should I read it? Well, then, yeah, it does kind of end on a cliffhanger. You're not sure what happened to the original Danger Unlimited team, and then this book itself ends on a, oh, what happens next? But you will never get to know because there's no more Danger Unlimited. But I was really interested in this book, and I thought it was good. So even though, as a person, John Byrne is not the best, I thought this was a pretty good book. Now, this is another... First of all, it is by Robert Tennell and Mark Wheatley. See, I told you he's one of my favorites. This is sort of one of those, what if something happened to Batman and it was a slightly different story? So like here, it's basically saying, what if the Shadow or Batman was in the Great Depression? and you've got these characters, they're filthy rich, but then the Great Depression hits, and suddenly they don't have any money anymore. And this is about one of those guys. He's a rich street vigilante. He gets hit by the Great Depression, but he still is trying to fight crime. And it hits him just how different life is when you don't have any money. And he becomes a different person. It's pretty good. I remember thinking, okay, this is trying to take those old pulp stories and putting a realistic spin on them, but then you've still got a lot of pulp action that's very unrealistic. If you're okay with the mixture of the realistic and the unrealistic, this is a really good book, and there's a sequel that I do not yet have. But if you can't deal with the realistic and the unrealistic meeting, then you might want to give this one a skip. I thought this one was really good, though. Okay, we got another one here by Mark Wheatley, Frankenstein Mobster. Get it? Instead of monster, it's mobster. And this is basically set in a kind of weird city, very almost like a Hellmouth from Buffy, something kind of like that. And this story is about a female cop who finds out that her father has been resurrected as this monster, and I believe is being used as a tool of the mob. And there's actually a lot more going on there. It's a pretty dense book, pretty convoluted. You may be hearing my cat meow right now. I'm going to go over there and check on that in a minute. Pretty dense book, and when I say convoluted, I don't mean hard to follow. I mean the mythology is very involved. Mark Wheatley very clearly gave a lot of thought to this world when he did this. And there's the number 1 on there. As far as I know, there is not a Frankenstein Mobster Part 2. I would love for there to be, and I'm sure he has other stories in mind, because I don't remember if it's on here or online, but I was reading about the history of this city where this takes place. He definitely has like a fully mapped out past for this world, and that's very great. Definitely a very fun, very outside of the box kind of book. If you want that, then I would suggest picking this up. And I've already decided I'm probably only going to do half of this shelf. This always happens where I get into these books and I start talking a lot longer than I really should. Okay, this is a Star Trek book, and it may be my only one that I have. This is called Assignment Earth, and I got it because John Byrne wrote and drew it. I have not seen the Star Trek The Original Series episode with Gary Seven and Roberta Franklin, but basically it was set in the 1960s. The Star Trek crew had come back in time and they had an encounter with these two. This is sort of, if you're a fan of Doctor Who, and I know everyone in the universe is a fan of Doctor Who except for me, if you're a fan of Doctor Who, this is something that you would definitely want to try out. It's got an alien secret agent and a human female companion. That's Doctor Who, basically. These guys are just Star Trek characters. And what is going on here is that each story takes place 1 year later, so it gets on into the early 70s. And basically the premise was, what if the Assignment Earth spin-off series actually happened? Because the episode Assignment Earth was meant to be the backdoor pilot for a new show that wound up not happening. Well, the premise here is, what if that show did happen? And this is a really good book. Like I say, John Byrne is a pretty good storyteller. He's a great artist. He's just, as a human being, he is not that great of a person for many reasons. Got a couple of Ghostbusters books here. One of them, I'm going to get the plot of these two confused. This one is they get transported to a hellish dimension, and there's other ghosts and demons over there, and it's okay. I mean, it's pretty decent, but it's not very memorable. There's a lot of it that I don't recall right off the top of my head. But this other one here is, in my opinion, much, much better. And this one, all the members of the Ghostbusters, except for Winston, have been transported throughout time and space, and they must all be reunited in the present day to stop an alien invasion. Not an alien invasion, a demon invasion. This one is really fantastic. In fact, the art here, nothing against this artist, but I think the art within the book is actually much better than the art on the cover here. But if you like Ghostbusters, I would suggest getting both of these, but in my opinion, Displaced Aggression is the better of the two. The other one is called The Other Side. And these, as far as I know, are not connected to the current Ghostbusters series by Eric Burnham. I think they are completely unrelated, but it involves the Ghostbusters team. And so if you like those movies, if you like the cartoon or whatever, check those out. Now, this is a book I believe I got for Christmas or something. Bo Hampton and Robert Tennell. Robert Tennell, he worked on the Lone Justice book. See, all these guys are kind of sort of working together on different stuff, and I think that's really cool. This is called Demons of Sherwood. The premise is basically several years after Robin Hood was done doing his adventuring days, he kind of has to reunite with his merry men, and there's a supernatural threat going on in Sherwood Forest. And this is a pretty okay story. At times the art is a little questionable, but the story itself is pretty solid, I think. And if you like Robin Hood, or if you like supernatural fiction, I would suggest picking this up. Okay, this other book here is a Solomon Kane story. Now, I know that there's Chris Bacalo art here on the cover, but I do not believe Bacalo actually did the interiors here. This is one of those stories, what's his name? The guy who created Solomon Kane, Robert E. Howard, he did a unfinished, incomplete story called The Castle of the Devil, and he did not finish it before he died, so that story has since been completed by other people, Robert E. Howard enthusiasts, or I think there was a couple of prose versions of the story that both ended very differently. This is a comic book story that basically takes that unfinished manuscript and it kind of fleshes it out into a storyline. I remember this being pretty good. If you like, once again, supernatural Van Helsing type stories, except this is better than Van Helsing, this would be up your alley. It's, a Puritan demon slayer. That's a solid concept, and this book delivers, in my opinion. So that's a lot of fun. The Black Forest. This is also by Robert Tennell. Tennell's name on there. Robert Livingston, I believe, is the name of that guy. And I think Justin Vokes, you know what? I hope I'm not getting those names wrong. Neil Vokes and Todd Livingston. I was getting those names wrong. The Black Forest is a World War II or World War I supernatural war story. So if you like Hellboy, war stories with a whole lot of the occult involved, this is definitely that. It's black and white, so I know a lot of people don't like black and white, but this was originally black and white. So if you're a fan of like The Walking Dead, this is kind of like that. It's a black and white story that was intended to be black and white, and it's I remember reading this and thinking it was pretty good. It's about this soldier guy, that guy, and he teams up with a monster, and they're basically going in to try and stop the Nazis from doing something supernatural. Like I said, if you like Hellboy, this is right up your alley. The Iron West. If you recall, much earlier this year, I did a review of a Doug TenNapel book called Creature Tech, and this is by TenNapel. This is called The Iron West, and basically it's a alien robot infused with the Western genre type story. This is definitely, if you're a fan of like the mixed genres like Firefly or something like that, this is along those same lines. This is set in the past, though. This is not like a futuristic Western, but it's pretty fun. What's his name? TenNapel's art is very good, and the story itself is pretty basic. It's not a very complicated story. It's pretty simple, but it's fun to look at the art, and it's a solid story in my opinion. Now, this book, it was weird. Jeff Amano's Red Warrior. It says, Assassin for the Thieves' World. I don't even think that tagline has anything to do with this story. This was basically it's weird. A Cold War story, sort of. It's set in and around the end of the Cold War, if I'm not mistaken. And you've got this guy, he finds out that the Soviets are trying to do a super soldier type program. I'm spoiling it, basically. Sorry, guys. And then hilarity ensues. He is working for the government, so there's all sorts of government intrigue. What's really weird about it is that at the very end, Jeff Amano was talking about influences for this book, and he was mainly talking about like mixed martial arts and wrestling as his influences, and I thought that was very strange for a story like this, but the story itself is very good. It's also black and white, and if you like that kind of stuff, political intrigue, science fiction, low-level science fiction, this is very much that, and it's very good in my opinion. Now, with these three, I'm not going to pull each of them out individually. Jack Staff. This is one of those things I was talking about earlier. The guy here, I don't know his name, Paul Grist. He, apparently, the rumor is, he had a pitch for Marvel's Union Jack character, who is a British, I don't think has any powers, a British vigilante type character, and Marvel did not accept his pitch, so he took his ideas, changed the names around, and he came up with Jack Staff. See, that's Jack Staff. If you have seen Union Jack, you know that Union Jack looks very similar to this. The stories are really fun. There's a whole lot of, like, homages to other things. Like, here, the Lois Lane type character, instead of working for the best newspaper in the city or the country or whatever, she works for a tabloid. So it's stuff like that. He does a good job of taking these homages and twisting them around just enough so that they resemble original characters and concepts. The reason I have not sought out Volume 4, and never will, is because after a while you begin to keep reading these and you realize he is not going to reveal any more about these characters. Like, the Jack Staff character especially, he just feels very bland. We don't know anything about him after 3 volumes, and this first volume is like 400 pages. After 3 volumes, I still don't know anything about Jack Staff, and I don't really like that. I like to know a little bit about my characters that I'm reading about, and some of the characters are more fleshed out than others, but he has like 10 different characters that he's bouncing around throughout this series, and that makes it hard to flesh out any of the characters and give them personality, in my opinion. So that's why I did not keep reading Jack Staff, but I would definitely, if you're curious, I would check out the first volume at least. I think the cover price is like $20, so for 400 pages, that's not a bad deal, but I am not going to keep reading the series for the reason that I have explained. Now here we have got Giant Robot Warriors by Stuart Moore and Ryan Kelly. This is something that if I had known what it was before I bought it, I probably wouldn't have bought it. It's a very solid, well put together story. It's a political satire, and I do not like political satire no matter what it is satiring. If it's satiring people on the left or people on the right, I don't care. Either way, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of politics in general, and that's why I didn't really care for this book. Now, there is a lot of giant robot stuff. There's, I think aliens are involved. There's the end of the world that's going on. But at the end of the day, that's basically just Moore and Kelly's, they're basically making fun of George Bush. So if you like that kind of thing, then check it out. But me, I probably wouldn't have bought it if I had known what it was about. We're getting close to the end of this part of the video because I'm going to stop just about 5 books from now. This one was one where the premise, the Iron Ghost, by the way, the premise was much more interesting than what they actually did with it. And this is by Chuck Dixon, who I have read some very good books by Chuck Dixon. This was not really one of them. Basically, close-ish to the end of World War II, you've got this guy who's kind of like the Shadow. In Nazi Germany, he is killing different people. And these two guys are cops. These two guys are cops who are investigating all of these murders. It's a very interesting concept. the problem is, at the end of the story, I really don't feel like the mystery has a very satisfactory ending to it. It's just kind of, oh, here's the ending, and you're left scratching your head. I was left scratching my head because there are 2 forewords to this book, and in both of the forewords, the people who wrote those said, don't flip to the ending. The ending is really great. Don't spoil it for yourself. So here I was thinking that it was going to be a really great ending, and then I get there and I'm just, what just happened? It was definitely not as great as these guys were saying that it would be. This book I reviewed on my channel before, Zombie Reanimated. It's a very cartoonish book. It's very different from any zombie story you've ever read before or seen before. If you are tired of zombie stories, if you've seen them all or you think you've seen them all, read this book, because this book is very innovative, very different from any zombie story, and it makes zombies fun again. I was sick of zombies, and then I saw this, and against my better judgment, I thought, well, the art style looks good, so I picked it up. I wound up really loving it. So, as I've said, I've talked about this one before on my channel, so I won't bore you guys with a mini review, since I've already reviewed that one. I'll just put this one over here. Then I've got a Green Hornet book, Blood Ties. Long story short, I really did not like this. This is apparently a spin-off from Kevin Smith's Green Hornet, which I have not read. But I saw this cheap somewhere. I got it, and it just wasn't very good. It was fairly predictable, and then when it wasn't predictable, you really had no idea why stuff was happening. In a lot of ways, it felt like 2 or 3 different stories with significant chunks removed from the story, and then all stitched together to form one story. It's been a while since I've read this, but I remember distinctly not liking it. And I'm also not a gigantic Green Hornet fan, but I feel like that book could have won me over if it was good, and it really wasn't. So, oh well. And then, Munden's Bar. This was fun. It looks very Simpson-y. It's not like The Simpsons. This is I believe, collection of short British comic books from an anthology series called Munden's Bar. And most of these stories are either set in the bar or characters in the bar are telling the stories. So it's kind of like a Tales from the Crypt kind of comic book. Very science fiction-y. A whole lot of fun reading it. If you like the British style of comic book, then this would definitely be something you should check out. Now, this here is like 90 or 60 pages of Matt Wagner's Mage. It's really hard to describe it just having read that. I do have a big, thick volume of Mage, which I believe collects all of this, and I haven't read that yet, so I've only read this, and like I say, it's hard to describe, but it's basically kind of a Star Warsian type story. There's a big battle of good and evil, where this guy is your Luke Skywalker. Whoops. This guy is your Luke Skywalker. That guy is your Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I guess she's like the Harrison Ford, Han Solo type character. And that's basically what it is. It's a magic story set in the present day, which this was written in the 80s, so it's set in the 1980s. And that's basically what I know. I don't really know much else about it, so I can't give more detail until I've read more. But I thought this was very enjoyable because I love Matt Wagner's art, and he's a pretty decent writer also. So if you like Wagner, I would suggest giving Mage a shot. And then 2 more, and then I'm going to stop. These are not related, so I will pull them out one at a time. The Adventures of Luther Arkwright. I didn't like this. In fact, it took me well over a year to read this. It's not that long, but it was a chore, guys. It was a chore for me to read just 10 pages of this book. And finally, one day I just did it about a year after finally starting it, and it's really, really boring. Like, it's in black and white, and like I've said, a few of these books are in black and white, but for some reason, black and white really hurts this one. When I see this, I'm thinking, okay, interdimensional secret agent, because that's what the premise is. Luther Arkwright is a secret agent in the multiverse, and there's many different secret agents across the multiverse, and he's got kind of a secret past, and this book sort of explores his past. It's really boring, though. Like, you would think with Interdimensional Secret Agent that it would be wild fun, but it is not. It is one of the most boring comic books I've ever read. I really, really hated it, guys. There's a sequel. I was going to get the sequel before I had read this, and then I read this, and nope, not getting the sequel, not at all. I cannot not recommend this enough. It was really a must-miss, if I'm being honest. So, unfortunately, that's one that I read, and I did not enjoy reading it. And the last one that I will talk about in this video, The Remarkable Worlds of Professor Phineas B. Fuddle. If you've ever seen the animated Road to El Dorado movie, this is like that, where these two characters in the bottom, they are like your Miguel and Tulio from the Road to El Dorado. It's a wild, fun story. Starts off in the 1880s in London, and then you're just kind of going all over the place. Different time travel, interdimensional stuff. This is a lot of fun. And it's done, or it was at one point released by Vertigo, I think, but this says Paradox Press. So I don't know if Paradox Press was related to DC and related to Vertigo. I'm not sure. But I had a blast reading that story. I definitely wish that more people had heard of that and had read it, because it's a whole lot of fun. It's just really, really fun reading that. And my throat is just about dead. I've almost finished my water over here, and I will talk about the rest of the shelf in a later video. Probably won't take me nearly as long, because some of the rest of this stuff is series and so there's gonna not take me as long to talk about an entire series. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys tomorrow with a different kind of video. I'll catch you later. Have fun!